so much happens in part 3. Okay? Now, in part 1 and 2, it felt like it was, there was some plot development, but it was mostly getting to know the characters. But part 3 is all plot. I'm going to give you guys a summary, and there's going to be mega spoilers, okay? So don't watch this. But I know you're not going to read it anyways, so feel free to continue watching. So, where did we leave off in part 2? Part 2 we left off, Alyosha is at the monastery. Father Zosima's dying, okay? He's hearing the life story. Ivan just headed off from Moscow. Dimitri is stalking in the garden house, waiting for Grushenka to come to his dad, who offered her money to come and sleep with him and potentially marry. And Dimitri is very angry at his father. They're not speaking, and there's tension, okay? He might kill his father. And then other main characters, that's basically it, okay? So, what happens in part 3? So it starts off with Alyosha, okay? Alyosha's still at the monastery. Father Zosima dies. Now, this draws a big crowd because people kind of think he's like a saint, or not a saint, but like he has like some sort of special spiritual abilities, and they think something crazy is going to happen. They don't know what, but they think something crazy is going to happen. But unfortunately, nothing crazy happens, and instead the body just starts to smell like a regular body. And everyone's kind of taken aback by this. One of the other monks at the, I'm drawing a blank. Where do monks stay? Monasteries? There we go. One of the other monks at the monastery, who was a naysayer, he didn't really like Father Zosima. He kind of causes this big scene where he like accuses him of being evil and like not a good person, and then gets the crowd all riled up. And Alyosha is kind of just in the corner, like absolutely weeping because he loves Zosima and knows he's a good person, but he's having this crisis of faith because he's not sure why God is letting Father Zosima's image be tarnished by the fact that his body is stinking. So he has this really terrible moment where he's just like bawling his eyes out. And then he comes back later to the monastery. And, he goes somewhere, but I'll get into that in a second. Anyways, he comes back to the monastery later, and he goes in to see the body, and he has this vision of Father Zosima at this like marriage supper feast thing, and he basically just comforts him, and then Alyosha comes out of the room, and he's just like, he's kissing the ground, and he has this like reconciliation moment. So it's good. Now, where he goes in between those two things is he goes to visit Grushenka. Now, it's not on purpose. He's leaving the monastery, and I think it's his cousin. I'm not sure how they're related. One of the other guys at the monastery is named Ratikin. I think that's how you say his name. He's like a no good guy. Doesn't really. He's looking for trouble, and he tempts Alyosha to come to Grushenka's house. And Alyosha is so dejected. He's like, I don't care. Take me anywhere. So they show up to Grushenka's house, and Grushenka basically is like, oh, I've been waiting for you. It's so good to have you here. And she basically reveals the fact that she wanted to ruin him, but she's changed her mind, and that's because Alyosha called her sister and like extended this like hand of like forgiveness and recognized her as like a good person, like an equal, and so she changes her mind, and they have this like nice bonding moment. Next, we'll get into the meat and potatoes of this section. So Alyosha's done at that point, and we'll get into the meat and potatoes, and that is Dimitri. Okay. This is the spoiler part, so please, if you're gonna read it sometime soon, just don't watch this. Anyways, Dimitri's in a tough spot. He has borrowed money from Katerina, 3,000 rubles, which she told him to wire to her sister, and he didn't. He took it, and he spent a bunch of it. He went to a nearby town and just gave it a bunch away, ordered booze and like candy and like charcuterie and wine and just like threw all the money away. So he owes like a large sum of money, and he has no money to his name either, so he can't pay back this debt. And so he's trying to figure out a way to make money so he can like get his honor back. So first he goes to Grushenka's protector. Technically she's married to him, but they haven't really been together for a while because he's so senile and just kind of lives in his house separate from her. So he goes to visit him, and I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to trade his right to his father's estate for upfront cash. And so he's asking for, I think it's the same amount, 3,000. And Samsonov, the guy, he's like, well, obviously I can't do that. I can't give you cash up front. Not really my type of deal. But I know a guy who would love to buy it from you. He's this guy called the Hound, and he's in a nearby town. So why don't you go and ask him? So Alyosha like leaves right then. He has no money, right? So I'm not sure. I don't think he is able to commandeer like a cart with a horse. I'm not sure what he maybe pawns his watch or something to like make it there because he's so desperate. Gets there and the guy's just piss drunk, excuse my French, and he tries to sober him up, slap him around a little bit. Nothing works. So he's just so desperate. But he's like, "Hey, fine, I'll just sleep and wake up in the morning." He wakes up. The guy woke up before him and started drinking again, and he's just like passed out, incapacitated on the floor, and he's like, "This is never gonna work. He's gonna keep drinking all week. It doesn't." And so he just leaves. He walks back to town. So that was a failed venture. And Samsonov knew that it would be a failed venture, and he kind of just was playing a trick on him. Next, we have Mrs. Koklakov. So Dimitri goes to Mrs. Koklakov with the same offer, I believe. I could be getting that wrong. Anyways, he's trying to get money from her. And she is like having this like it's not a fit, but like she's having this like weird moment where she's like, "I had a dream. You're gonna get super, super rich. All you gotta do is go to the gold mines. If you go to the gold mines, you'll be rich. I can guarantee this." And he's like, "Well, will you give me 3,000 cash up front?" She's like, "You'll get way more than 3,000." And he's like, "Yes." And then she's like, "But you gotta go to the gold mines." And he's like, "No." So anyways, he doesn't end up getting the money. It was another wasted venture. He's desperate. She turns him away. Next, he runs to Grushenka's house. Now, Grushenka's not there. She had left previously. Now, I kind of left that detail out, but while Alyosha was there, she reveals the fact that, well, actually I got a letter from my ex, I think it was fiance or whatever, from 5 years ago. He's coming back to a nearby town, and he wants me to meet him. So she's just waiting for a telegram, and she'll head out. She got that telegram that night, packs her bags, takes off, and leaves. But she tells her chambermaid, that's not the right word, like woman servant, her name's Fenya, so Fenya knows where she went. And so when Dimitri breaks into Grushenka's house, she's not there, but Fenya's there. And so he kind of just like assaults her, basically, and like makes her tell him where she is. And he's like, but no, that's not right. Because, now I'm messing up my details. Anyways, maybe he doesn't know where she is, because he takes a pestle from her house and runs to his father's house. And I'm assuming that's because he thinks that she's at his father's house. And so, because remember that Fyodor had offered 3,000 rubles to her to come sleep with him. Now, of course, Grushenka, it's revealed later, was not really entertaining this. She was just teasing everybody. But he thinks that she's there. So he runs off and he hides underneath the window with the pestle, just waiting. And I think he just gets impatient or something. He doesn't know where his father is and is trying to figure out what's going on. So he taps the signal, meaning that Grushenka's here. And now the other not slave, but a servant of his father, Fyodor, is the only one that knows that signal. He's supposed to knock at the door to let Fyodor know that Grushenka came. But Dimitri figured out this signal from the servant, Smerdyakov, and so he taps the signal. Fyodor opens the window, "Grushenka, where are you?" And then the narration cuts out. It doesn't tell us what happens. However, the next scene we get is Dimitri running away with the pestle. He jumps over the fence, and as he's atop the fence, Gregory, Smerdyakov, another servant of Fyodor, calls him a father killer. But he actually didn't see him do anything. He just assumed. And so, in his plight, in his, what's the word? In his urgency, no. In his desperation, he hits Gregory over the head with the pestle, throws the pestle, and then he jumps down and tries to help Gregory, and he's like, "It's too late. I can't save him." Then he runs away. So he's just potentially committed murder against Gregory. We don't know what happened with his dad, but he now has 3,000 rubles. So, again, we're not sure if he got that from his dad or not, but when he shows up to his friend's place, he has the 3,000. At least what we think is 3,000. It might not be 3,000. That becomes important later, the exact amount of the money. Okay, believe it or not, we're only like halfway through. And sorry, I'm bungling some plot points, but I'm doing this all off memory and like a couple of notes, so my mistake. Anyways, now that all that crazy, that's like the main thing that happened in that section. So then he goes to his friend Perkhotin, who's just a merchant dude, I think, and he's like, prep me to leave. I'm going to the nearby town of Mokroy. And so at this point, he's figured out that Grushenka is there. So, of course, he's in suspicion of him because he's full of blood and his face is covered in blood, his coat is bloody, and he's like, what happened? And did you get in a fight? And he's just like not telling him what happened. And so he like orders like a crap ton of food and charcuterie and candy and wine and booze, same as last time. And he's like, I want it to be just like last time. And then he commandeers a cart with 2 horses and takes off for town. He gets there. There's a few Polish guys there. One of them is the ex-fiance of Grushenka, and Grushenka, and they're playing cards, and it's kind of like an awkward situation. But Dimitri brought all this money and is ordering food, and there's girls from town coming, so everyone's kind of just like letting him stay because they want to have a good time. So they're playing cards, waiting for the party to start, and Grushenka has this realization. And she realizes that she doesn't love this Polish ex-fiancé who she thought she loved this whole time. She's been waiting in town, waiting for this guy to come back because she thought she loved him. And she realizes she doesn't. She loves Dimitri. And she makes this confession a bit later. And, of course, Dimitri is absolutely floored at this because he says that she's the queen of his heart. And that's the reason he lives. Another detail I left out before is he took pistols from Perkhotin before he left for town. And his plan was to kill himself in the morning. But now that there's this new revelation that Grushenka loves him, he's no longer going to go through with this plan, right? He wants to live, and they make these like really vague plans of moving somewhere and becoming farmers and peasants and tilling the land and things like that. Anyways, parties in full swing. They party all night. They're having tons of fun. They're just, it's great. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of officers show up at the front door at like 5 a.m. or something, right as the party is like kind of on the down, like winding down. And of course, Dimitri's like very surprised because they got there fast. So anyways, the story behind that was that Perkhotin, after Dimitri left, was like, this guy has no money. How does he have 3,000 rubles? He's going to shoot himself in the head with a pistol. And he just went to party in Mokroy is the town nearby, and Grushenka's there. Like, something is up. Like, how did he get this money? And so, because Dimitri had flippantly said, oh, I'm going to kill my father, like many times in the last month, he, I guess, this feeling in the pit of his stomach. So he goes to visit Mrs. Koklakov, and he's like, did you give him money? And she's like, no, of course not. So he leaves, and then he runs to his father's house, and actually, at the same time, I believe, Gregory's wife, Maria, also found Gregory slumped on the ground, full of blood, and they reached the police around the same time. So the police are playing cards with the principal investigator and some other court people. So they all run over to Fyodor's house. They find Fyodor on the ground, dead, and then Gregory is actually still alive. So they resuscitate him, and he tells the story of how he saw Dimitri running across the lawn with the pestle, and the pestle's right there on the gravel pavement, so that corroborates the story. But there is one detail that's strange, and that's the door in the house is open, which Dimitri claims it was closed. And so there's this possibility that a second person was in the room, and we're not sure who it was. And also the money that Fyodor had been keeping for Grushenka, that's gone too. So it's pretty damning for Dimitri, right? He's like suspect number one. Like he's the only suspect. And so they saddle up the horses and they head out to Mokroy, and they get there at whatever it is, 5 a.m. after the party, and they apprehend Dimitri. Now there's this long section, I think it's like a whole book, several chapters anyways, of the interrogation scene, or the investigation scene, where they are trying to beat it out of, not beat it because they're being very nice to him, but they're trying to basically get it out of Dimitri what happened. And so he's telling his side of the story. I won't get into all the details, but anyways, he is adamant that he did not kill his father, but all the evidence is against him. The only point, there's 2 points that are kind of strange. One is the doors open, which Dimitri claims when he was underneath his father's window, when he tapped the signal, it was closed. He's adamant about that. And then the second thing is, he claims he got the money because he didn't spend the full 3,000 from Katerina the first time. He said he kept half of it on a thing on his necklace. But the problem is he didn't tell anybody about it. So there's no one to corroborate that. And he says that, like today, like the day that the party was, he spent the second half. And no one's seen that money, so they can't corroborate it. And so no one really believes him. But there's 2 kind of strange details. And that's kind of, and it ends with them putting him in jail awaiting trial. So they haven't convicted him or anything. They've done the preliminary investigation. They've talked to witnesses. They wrote everything down. And they're, okay, we're going to get you a court date. You're going to prison for now until trial. And they kind of put him in the cart with the jailer, and they send him off. And that's where part 3 ends. Yeah, I mean, general thoughts on that. Very dramatic, okay? What a crazy night for Dimitri. One thing that I thought was cool is that all the arguments in the investigation scene and the way that Dimitri composes himself, which is very strange, by the way. He's kind of like waffling back and forth, claiming certain things, and he has this big emotional swings throughout the scene. It's almost archetypal for the like the human, I'm butchering this. It's archetypal for like the human desire to like justify ourselves from sin and evil. So he's like, yeah. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like you can kind of see yourself in Dimitri's shoes. Maybe not necessarily murder, but like something else that you know that you've done or feel guilty of. That was not very elegant, but I hope you get what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I guess the big questions we're left with is, did he do it? Did he not do it? We're not sure at this point. And then also, kind of strange, a couple of plot lines that haven't been closed off yet is obviously Ivan. He went out from Moscow, but he hasn't come back in part 3, so we're expecting him to come back in part 4 and for Dostoevsky to tie everything together. And then Alyosha had this like marriage proposal promise from Lise, which didn't feature at all in part 3. And also Father Zosima, before he died, Father Zosima told Alyosha, you have some great work to do in the world, so you have to go out and do it. You have to leave the monastery. And we don't know what Alyosha's great work is yet. So there's that. Yeah, and I guess that's like the gist of it. Yeah, so if you like this video, hopefully you've already read Brothers Karamazov, but hopefully it inspires you to go and read it, because it is a very good book. If I had to rate it right now, I think I'd give it 4 out of 5 stars, but I'm really hoping that the last section does a really good job of tying everything together and bumps it up to a 5, because I know a lot of people this is their favorite book. So yeah, thanks for listening, watching, and see you next time.